So as I already introduced myself, my name is Aniko. I'm a senior research manager at GlobeScan, and I will talk to you a little bit about why we do public opinion research and also some top tips for how to go about your own research. So I'm starting with a bit of an introduction to GlobeScan. So we are a global insights and advisory consultancy, but what does that mean? So we work with clients all around the world, and we have 9 offices in 5 continents. And our clients range from big companies like Coca-Cola and McDonald's and IKEA to NGOs and not-for-profits like the United Nations or Fair Trade, for example. And we do research for them to help them better understand people's needs and attitudes and their own impact on society and the environment, and ultimately to help these organizations make better decisions towards a more sustainable and equitable future through providing them data and advice. And we do all kinds of different projects through various different research methodologies and with different audiences. But today I will focus on research among the general public, so people like you and me. And GlobeScan have been collecting public opinion research for 35 years now globally. So we have quite a strong track record in doing this. So why do we do public opinion research? Well, the world is changing, societies are changing, and so are people's attitudes and values and needs with that. So the things that we worry about now or the things that we want or need are very, very different to what our grandparents thought about when they were our age, for example. So it's very important to keep measuring and understanding these changes as a way of connecting the general public with decision makers to help them make better decisions. So this kind of data can be used as evidence to inform these important decisions. And I have a few findings up on the slides from our annual GlobeScan Healthy and Sustainable Living Survey. So we do this research globally since 2019 every year. And we measure public opinions all around the world around healthy and sustainable living. And I think this year we reached just under 30,000 people. And the report is available online. And some of our questions will probably be good inspiration for the kind of research that you're doing. So I definitely recommend checking it out. It is very interesting, I promise. To give you a little bit of a flavor of the kind of findings we had this year. So we found that people are increasingly feel disempowered when it comes to environmentally friendly lifestyle. And they increasingly want governments and businesses to do more on addressing climate change and other environmental issues. And over the past 5 years, we have seen an increasing people saying that individuals cannot do much to save the environment. And you can see that on that bottom green line on the chart. And most people also say that they're already doing everything that they can to protect the environment. So that's that dark grey bar near the top. So what does that mean? It means that many consumers, so people like you and me, feel like they have reached a limit in terms of their perceived ability to help and make an impact when it comes to climate change. So in the coming years, businesses along with government will increasingly have to find ways to encourage consumer action on sustainability and to help us live more sustainable lifestyles. And our report that I've linked here looks at ways to inspire various different ways that they could do, that government and businesses can help and help people live these more sustainable lifestyles depending on their current needs and expectations. We also work with IKEA, so this is another example of public opinion research, and we've done this research since 2017. This is again another global project. So this year we've done it in 30 countries and reached just about 33,000 people. And the results will come out in a few weeks' time. So for now, I have last time's results, so from 2021 on the slide here, and you can see that we looked at some of the strongest barriers to doing more on climate change. So essentially trying to understand where people need more support. And some of the results were used then in IKEA's communications. So you can see a few examples of this. So kind of trying to provide solutions for people at home. So water saving is one of them. And also some inspiration on actions that they can take at home. So reusing old textiles, for example, as a good idea, making new patchwork with leftover fabrics rather than throwing them away. So kind of taking on that education and empowerment role themselves as a result of finding out that not knowing what to do and kind of that need for more information being one of the main barriers for action. Now, how do we do that? So this is the part probably that you're most interested in. So firstly, to start a little bit about the difference between quantitative and qualitative data. So to put it very, very simply, and you will have more information on the slide and the recording when you go back on this, quantitative data is numbers and statistics. So it's very objective, it's quantifiable, it's clear numbers, it's proportions, it's percentages, and it's usually a robust data set. So you have a fairly large sample size, so a lot of people engaging with your survey, for example. And when you analyze it, you can create charts, you can create graphs and reference percentage values. And when you use this when you're able to, when you'd like to identify big general trends. So saying something like the majority or 90% of students in the school want this, or to be able to measure and compare data over time. So saying something like there's been an increase of 5 percentage points in something compared to last year. Qualitative data, on the other end, is much more about kind of understanding deeper opinions and feelings. You usually have a smaller sample size, so less people that you engage with. But on the other hand, it's going to be much deeper understanding of the why behind your data. So you'll be able to explore more complex topics, for example, that are not that easy to measure on a survey, where you kind of have to keep things as short as possible. So you'll be able to engage with your peers in things like what sustainable lifestyles mean to them, or what are the most important climate actions for them and why. Some top tips for how to start as well. So top tips for research design, how you set out. So I think the most important thing is being clear on your objectives. So knowing what you'd like to get out of this, kind of identifying your top 2-3 main things that you like to find out. How the data will be used, what are you trying to achieve, and who are your audience. So really understanding from the very beginning, what are you trying to achieve? And then very closely linked to that is trying to see what's out there already. So if you have time, do some desk research, look around at the internet, in the library. You might be able to answer your objective based on what's already out there, or it might help and inform what kind of method is best for you. Maybe there's a lot of information out there, quantitative information about some of the things that you're want to find out. So maybe some qualitative work would be better, kind of understanding the why behind all that data out there. And also creating a clear plan is very important. So think about any deadlines you may have. Are they realistic? Create a very clear timeline. What will you do when? And also, is there anyone else that you're working with? We very, very rarely do research alone. There's always almost a team behind things. And you want to make sure that everyone's clear on their roles and responsibilities and aware of your timings as well. Then some top tips for designing your actual questions that would go into a quantitative survey. So again, I'm just going to go back to what I said already. Objectives are very important. So linking back to those initial objectives that you identified, it is very, very easy to get distracted and end up with a very long-winded survey with lots of different questions. And at the end, when you get your data, you kind of stand there and think, oh, but I didn't really ask what I wanted to ask about. So it's very important to keep going back to your objectives and make sure that your questions are to the point. You should also keep your questions as neutral as possible. So it's important to avoid leading your respondent to ensure that you have high quality and reliable data. So what does that mean? You should ask questions like, how important or not is it, instead of going straight in, do you think this is important? Or to what extent do you agree, if at all, with something, instead of saying, do you agree? Or, just like try and keep it balanced. You should prepare for all kinds of different answers as well. So make sure that you always have a don't know or a not applicable option. People might not feel comfortable answering everything, or they might genuinely just not know. You should ensure that you use balanced scales if you have scales. So, very positive, somewhat positive, neutral. We have a midpoint, somewhat negative, very negative. So you kind of have an option for everything. And with lists, include a none of the above or another option, just in case someone has other ideas or genuinely just don't identify with any of it. Another thing is keeping the questions short and easy to understand. So avoid using any jargon or difficult words. If anything feels a bit ambiguous, include a definition. And if you have time, I think it's always a good idea to test the questions on people. So if it's a survey for your peers, go and ask one or two of them who aren't working with you on this, whether the questions make sense to them. Just ask for their feedback. Sometimes it's surprising how useful that exercise can be. And then also think about the respondent experience. So keep it interesting, kind of avoid long lists. We should always try and keep these kind of surveys to like 10 minutes, maybe 15 at the absolute maximum, but people very easily get bored. And also don't forget about asking questions about them. It's very important when you're analyzing the data to know how old they are, for example, or gender, region, anything that's important for your analysis. Make sure you include those questions in there, but also avoid asking anything sensitive that you won't need. And then some tips for the focus groups. So again, you have to think about your participants' needs. So where you're going to have the group, online or in person, and different considerations come with either, just making sure that they're comfortable. If it's online, making sure that they can use the platform that you're using, and also who you have in the group. So generally good to have a good balance of different people from different backgrounds. And sometimes that kind of balance depends on the topic that you're discussing. So making sure people in the room can be comfortable with each other and feel able to share about the topics that you're planning to talk about. And then think about your questions like a conversation. So with a focus group, you kind of have to come in prepared with what we call a topic guide as well. And a lot of putting that together is similar to my advice on the quants side of things. So making sure it has a good flow, the questions are clear, they link to your objectives. But it also has to be a much more flexible than a quantitative questionnaire. You kind of have to adjust it based on the conversation in the room. And then there's also some top tips there for moderating the group. So making sure that you know your topic guide inside out, making sure everyone is given a chance to speak. You're always going to have people in the room who are more chatty than others. So kind of giving them a voice is really important. Don't let one person dominate the conversation. And also remain impartial. So as Holly mentioned, we can't be judgmental. We need to make everyone feel comfortable to share their opinions, and we have to create this honest environment where there's no right or wrong answers. And you can think about potential stimulus materials as well that you can show. So help people start thinking about their answers. It can really help break the silence in the room if you make it more interactive and have a task for them to complete together. And it will make your reporting much more interesting as well. And I strongly recommend, as a final point, to record or have a note taker present when you do these groups, because it will make your life a lot easier afterwards when you're trying to analyze the report, the results. And then finally, just a few tips for making the most out of your data. So organizing is key. So kind of having a clear structure of either tables if you're doing a quantitative data, or some kind of an analysis grid, or some kind of document where you collect thoughts from the qualitative research. So kind of having everything in one clear place is very important. And then also deciding on how you're going to present it. So think about who will use it and their needs. Does it need to be a really long report, or is it just a couple of pages with your key information? You don't have to absolutely show all data points that you've collected. So again, go back to those objectives and make sure that you're showing what you need to show. Creating a reporting plan is always a good idea. So kind of having an initial idea of how you're gonna show things. And then I just put a few examples from some of our reports to give you some ideas of how you can show these. So one is a line chart where you have multiple years worth of data, and some other ideas to kind of visualize and make your reports engaging. And always make sure that you are transparent and clear about your methodology. So where's the information come from? And always check your work. So having that final read is always very important. So I think these are my top tips. So thanks so much.